Storyteller. Dear viewers, in this series we present short stories in simple English. You hear the stories while you may read them on the screen. The writer's name is at the end of each story. Please click on like, share, and subscribe if you find the contents to your liking. We look forward to your valuable comments. And here we go with one. The Jolly Five. The sky was partly cloudy and the morning breeze was cool. But I was feeling greatly comfortable and enjoying the vast openness that lay in front. I was sitting alone in a chair in the balcony of a ninth floor flat facing southeast, the horizon seemingly miles away with undulating land tracts meeting the skyline. Baba, how do you feel? I turned to look at the smiling face of my daughter, who stood with my morning cup of tea. The twinkle in my eyes had my answer, and she left with a broad smile that meant I had told you so. Yes, it was on her insistence that I made this particular visit to Bangalore, now Bengaluru, where I had been earlier also on several occasions. In fact, my retirement from the professional occupation had of late given me ample freedom to move around, of course, subject to certain domestic and social compulsions. After moving into their new apartment in the outskirts of South Bangalore, my daughter had been telling me about the openness that still had not fallen prey to the ever increasing human hunger. That the settings would change, and it was just a matter of time, was amply clear as clusters of housing blocks could be seen coming up in the vicinity. Some of the hillocks had already lost parts of the body as rocks were being blasted off for useful utilization by intelligent human minds. But what I had now was the present, and keeping all prognostications at bay, I relished the calm natural beauty that lay ahead. I could see some human habitations here and there, but what gave me a pleasure was that most of the houses had abundance of trees around them, and apparently the owners had cared to retain them. The main road of the area was not far from this apartment block, and a wide road connecting the main road ran just below the balcony I was sitting on. Apart from some morning walkers and those out to report for their duties, not much of city activities could still be seen. And then it was the turn of the yellow school buses. Varied makes and sizes of buses, proudly displaying the names of the institutes, started arriving in hordes. They picked up children from the main gate of the block and moved on to the main road on way to their destination. I was amused as memories of the bygone days of my early life started flooding in. Unknowingly, a kind of comparison crept into my mind. Many decades ago, everything was so different. Had so many children collected in a place while heading for school, we would have let the locality know of our presence. Our clamor would have been uninhibited. Here, as I looked on the group below, I wondered how they could observe such restraint. Of course, here almost all the kids had someone to accompany them up to the door of the bus, parents in most cases, while paying all attention to the requirements of the little ones. In our days, the mothers waved at the exit with a word of blessing, and the rest was for our own. For most of us, walking to school was the usual practice. Some voices from below broke into my musing. I saw a group of 5 girls walking along the connecting road. They too had their school uniform, white shirt with navy blue trousers, and they carried on their bulky school bags on back. Though they were not very far from me, the height of my balcony could hardly allow me to have a very clear view of their features. But what I appreciated was their joyous voices, as was expected from the school-going children. They walked to the main road, stood waiting at a corner, evidently for a pickup. They seemed to be just in their teens and had none to accompany them. I noticed the usual exuberance in them while they were apparently teasing one or the other. Because of the distance now, I could only see their movements, but no voices reached me. Presently, a yellow school bus came. As they got in, it took a turn and left. Clearly, the bus followed its own route. My grandson, too, had got ready for his kids' school, and after usual bye bye, he left with his mother. A little later, I saw him below getting into his school bus. I decided to finish off some urgent pieces of work as the day progressed and got up from my seat of great comfort. Old man, what makes you smile alone? Eh? The query was from my better half, who stood by my chair in the balcony. I suggested her to pull a chair and sit beside. As if I have all the leisure in my life like you, was her comment. But she readily did as I said. So now, what's that? She asked sharply. Just keep on looking, I said, as my gaze was on the children returning from school, being dropped by the buses at their respective points of pickup. It was nearly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had been seated there like in the morning. Oh, what's big in this? She tried to get up, but I pulled her down. Relax. Just think of your times. Go back to those early days. I implored. You and your family have taken away everything from my life. There's nothing to reminisce now. Only I stopped her midway with a finger on my lips, even as I looked at the road below. Those 5 girls whom I had seen in the morning had just got dropped at the same point and had been returning home. But unlike other crestfallen children, they maintained their sprightliness, though the rigors of the school schedule left the impression on their disheveled hair and loosened uniform. Even as I tried hard to catch at least one or two words spoken by them, I heard something like kitchen, preparation, etc. just beside me, and I turned to see the withering figure of my wife, who surely found no interest in such idle time kill, while she had more important things to do to help my daughter. Though the girls were frolicking among themselves, I could not help remembering our wild outburst after getting out of our school at the end of the day and the eagerness to reach home so that we could gulp down some food and rush to the playground at the earliest. I could not but feel sad to think of the routine life of the present day kids caged in their apartments. Very often I would sit in the balcony to observe the departure and arrival of the school children. It gave me a sort of pleasure. On most days, I could see those 5 girls who did not have the faintest idea that they had been a source of enjoyment for a grandfatherly figure like me because of their mirthful disposition. One day, I saw that the group had 4 girls. One must have been absent for a cause. That day, the others seemed somewhat subdued in their outpouring. Could it be that the absent one was the primary motivator in the group? I wondered. The next day, and the day after also, the fifth one did not show up. Days passed. Now there were 4 of them, and they had again caught up with their usual vivacity. One day, I had to go out in the afternoon, and just near the main road, I saw the 4 girls returning home as usual. Though I saw them face to face for the first time, their profiles were quite familiar to me. They were laughing among themselves. On an impulse, I spoke out. You don't know me, but never mind. Just tell me, nowadays I don't see one of your friends. She used to be in your group. It was both a statement and a question. Clearly, the girls had never expected a stranger here with such a query. All the smiles had vanished as they observed me somewhat in surprise. Then one of them spoke. Uncle, she's not well. Oh, what happened? I was curious. After a sort of hesitation, the same girl said, actually, her mother is dead. We don't know much. Without waiting for my response, they quickly moved on. I felt they had some sort of uneasiness, but I could not make out anything. Days passed, and one morning, after the four vivacious girls had reached their point of pickup, I saw a gentleman accompanying the fifth girl to the same spot, and though they waited for the same bus, they apparently avoided any interaction. I felt a little surprised. Even if the presence of the gentleman was a cause of feeling a little shy, the girl who had just lost her mother surely deserved some compassionate gestures from her friends. The following days proved more intriguing as far as my interest in the girls was concerned. The four followed their earlier routine, and every day the fifth one came afterwards all alone. But her friends behaved as if she was unknown to them. While returning too, that girl stepped out slowly off the bus and walked much behind, alone. But there was no dearth of mirth in the four as they interacted among themselves. I had no clue and had no way to get to the truth. I could not make a query for fear of being embroiled in any unwanted controversy in this unknown environment. My day of returning home was near. I had one or two things to finish off. I stepped out one afternoon. Just a while ago, a midday rain had lashed the city, and scores of uneven patches on roads still held pools of water. Minding each step carefully to avoid a saffron wash by the passing vehicles, I was progressing slowly. Suddenly, I stood just opposite the bereaved girl who was also trying to negotiate a pull while returning from school. It took me some seconds to recognize her at such closeness, but I stood, and while she was just walking past me, I said, my dear child, I am not sure, but had some sad event. I left my sentence incomplete. The girl looked in surprise. She did not know me, but my compassionate tone and expression probably led her to speak. Yes, sir, my mother has died. Oh, but what happened to her? She must be quite young, I think, I said. Now the girl wore a look of suspicion, and she replied in rather a harsh tone, "She died willingly," and quickly walked away, leaving me baffled. It was clear that she did not want to talk anymore. After my work was over, I returned, but surprisingly, a bitter feeling continued to haunt me, and I decided to talk to my daughter. Oh, you were talking about a family on the other side of the block. Actually, the lady used to be a mental patient. Some say the husband never cared properly. They had regular quarrels. The lady found her own way of escape the other day. But I feel sorry for the unfortunate girl. Many try to avoid them. My daughter sounded sad. Now I told her about the behavior of the girl's friends, for no fault of her. Probably the friends had been instructed by their own families, but we had hardly a way to help in this situation. I returned to Kolkata, and in a few days the memory of the unfortunate girl became dimmed. After about 8 months, I was again in Bangalore on a cause. As I sat in the balcony the next morning, I started seeing the familiar scenes and enjoyed the busy movements of the school going children. Everything was as before. The distant view of the horizon was still the same, and I thanked God. Suddenly, some loud chirpings of girls made me look downwards. I saw four girls in their teens walking towards the main road. I recognized the group and remembered the fifth one. I waited to see that girl following this group, but she did not turn up. The four girls got into the bus like before and left. When my daughter came back, after putting my grandson in his bus, I asked her if she knew about the girl whose mother had committed suicide months back. She said, "They are not here. Probably the gentleman has shifted to his native place. But I feel so sorry for the girl. She was improperly treated by some people here as if she was from a family of mad. I heaved a deep sigh, and unknowingly a kind of sadness crept in me. I wondered why the world was becoming more and more cruel. Why are compassion and kindness in human beings on the wane? Was it so hard to be a little more thoughtful and sympathetic to a fellow traveler while we are all in the journey of our life?